right, hello. We are going to cover 4.3 in this video, vertical and horizontal translation. So take notes and hopefully you are checking in for attendance. Okay, 4.3, vertical and horizontal translations. So maybe you remember in your previous math class when you were given like a parent function and then you did, when you were graphing, you did some shifting upward or downward or to the left or to the right. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be focusing on vertical and horizontal shifts. Okay. All right. Before we get into that, let's just do a quick review. Quick review on 4.2. Okay, so on 4.2, where we had, we looked at something that looked like this, y sine bx, right? Or y equals a cosine bx. Okay, so let's just talk about this before we start, because we're going to start putting this all together, all the translations, the vertical and horizontal, and then also these that you learned in 4.2. Okay, so let's just remember that that this here, when you see this, you're going to multiply the original y values, and then here this changes your new your endpoints. Okay, so with just your basic sine and cosine graph, we know that we normally get one wave or one cycle from 0 to 2 pi, but having the b multiplier changes that. And then here, instead of going from 1 to -1 on the y, it will change according to a. Okay, so let's just graph one of these where we have both a and b. Okay, because in 4.2 we only focused on one or the other, but not both of them together. So I just want to take a look at doing both of them simultaneously. So let's go ahead and graph y equals, let's do 2 times sine 3x. Okay, so here we have both of them. Last time it was either just 2 sine x or just the sine 3x. But here now we have both of these happening. Okay, so I am going to graph over here. And I'm going to do the solid one, will be my final one. Okay, 2 sine 3x. And let's see, I'm going to do the original one, and then I'm going to have to stretch it. Okay, so I will do the purple will be y equals the original. Okay, the basic y equals sine x. Okay. Here, let me do this. Y equals sine 3x. Okay. Because remember, it's going to be the same graph as y equals sine x. The only thing that's going to change are the endpoints. So I'll do the y equals sine 3x. Okay. All right. So this here gives me new endpoints. And let's use, I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to use green, or let's use blue. Okay. All right, so here I'm going to get new endpoints. Okay, so normally it's from 0 to 2 pi, but because we're messing with the angle, we have to solve for x, divide everything by 3, and we get 2 pi over 3. So now my graph is going to go from 0 to 2 pi over 3 instead of 0 to 2x, okay? And then halfway between, that's going to be pi over 3. Okay, and so I'll do the purple graph first. Okay, let me put my 1 and -1 on the graph. Okay, 1, and -1. It looks like I'm going to have to stretch this by 2. So, okay, but we'll worry about that when we get there. Okay, so these are my new endpoints. So we're going to get one sine graph from 0 to 2 pi over 3 instead of from 0 to 2 pi. Okay. All right, so we know we get 0 here, here, and here. Halfway in between we get 1. Halfway in between we get -1, right? So this here is the graph y equals sine 3x. Okay, so now I'm going to do y equals 2 times sine 3x. So that means I have to multiply the original y values. Okay, so multiply y values. Okay, and so I'll do this one now in black. All right, so the y value here is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. Here the y value is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. So that's going to get stretched. Here the y value is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. Down here, -1 is the y value. -1 times 2 is -2. This gets stretched down to here. And here the y value is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. So here is my final graph. Okay, so this is how it would work if you had several things happening to the original graph. Okay, so you would find your new endpoints, and then you would multiply your y values. Okay, and so now we're going to add vertical and horizontal translations. In this first video, we're just going to focus on the vertical shifting, and then in part 2, we'll focus on horizontal translations. Okay. All right. So vertical translations. Okay. So this occurs when adding or subtracting to the trig function, not the angle, the actual trig function. Okay. So you might have something that looks like this. Y equals k plus sine x. Or you might have, again, we're going to focus just on sine and cosine, but the same idea still applies to all 6 trig functions. Okay. And if k is positive, then it will shift up. Shift up k units. And if it's negative, if k is negative, then shift down. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just focus on the shifting. We're not going to have anything multiplied here or here just yet. Okay, we'll do a couple where we just do shifting before we start throwing in these things here, these multipliers. Okay, all right, so let's do this first example. Let's go ahead and graph y equals 2 plus sine x for 1 cycle. Okay. All right. So, so this here is going to be a shift up 2 units. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and plot the original. So y equals sine x. I'll do that in my dash. And then I'll do the final graph, the actual one that I want, y equals 2 plus sine x in solid black. Okay. All right. So we're not messing with the angle. So we are still going to be from 0 to 2 pi. Okay. And our max for now, for the original, our max, when we do our original, the max was 1 and -1. Okay. So I'm going to do the purple original graph right now. Okay, so we have 0 here, 0 here, 0 here, halfway between 1, halfway between -1, right? Okay, so this is my original sine graph. Okay, and now it says I need to shift my graph up 2 units. So what I'm going to do is these 5 points that I have here, if I shift them up 2 units, then I'll get the whole graph shifted up 2 units. All right, so I'm going to have to go way up there. Okay. All right, so shift up 2 units. So here I am. So I'm going to go up 2 units. 1, 2. Plot a point there. Here's a point. I'm going to shift this point up 2 units. 1, 2. And here's a point over here. 1, 2. And here's a point. Shift it up 2 units. 1, 2. And here's a point over here. 1, 2. Okay. And we see here, we have the sine graph, this sine graph here. The whole graph got shifted up 2 units. Okay. So that's how the shifting works. And of course, if k is negative, k is less than 0, then you would just shift downwards instead. Okay, so let's take a look at one where we shift downward. And let's do cosine. So let's graph y equals -3 plus cosine x, okay, for 1 cycle. And we have 1 cycle from 0 to 2 pi. Okay, nothing is happening here to the angle, so we will still have 1 cycle from 0 to 2 pi. Okay, so I am going to graph it here. And we have 2 pi. And our max, our original max is 1 to -1. Okay. And I'm going to do y equals -3 plus cosine x in solid black. And I will use purple for my original graph of cosine. Okay. Okay, so original cosine is 1 here, 1 here, -1 in the middle. And then 0 halfway between, 0 halfway between. Okay, so this is my cosine graph. Okay, and I have to graph this here. So this is going to shift it down 3. So shift down 3. All right, so I'm going to need to extend this. 1, 2, 3. Okay, -1, -2, -3, -4. Okay. All right, so taking all 4 of these points, I'm going to shift these 4 points down 3, and that will shift the whole graph down 3. Okay, so starting with this one over here, this is going to shift down 3, 1, 2, 3. And then shifting this one down 3, 1, 2, 3. And then shifting this one down 3, 1, 2, 3. And shifting this one down 3, 1, 2, 3. And shifting this last point over here down 3, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so we see we have the cosine graph. The whole graph got shifted down 3 units. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and let's throw in some other things, okay? Because shifting, that's kind of easy. Just positive, you go up, negative, you go down. Okay. All right. So let's throw in some multipliers. Okay. Stuff we learned in 4.2. Okay. So let's take a look at this graph. Let's go ahead and graph y equals 2 plus 2 cosine x. Okay. So here, nothing happens to our angle. So we still have one cycle here for one cycle. Okay. So we still have one cycle from 0 to 2 pi, right? So we're still going from 0 to 2 pi. Nothing happened there, right? This one here, this is one where we have to multiply our y values. That was from 4.2, right? And this is what we're doing now. This is the new one. This is the new one, and this is a shift. Since it's positive 2, we'll shift up 2. Okay, so be able to take a look at the equation and be able to analyze it so that you know what's going to happen with the original graph. Okay, so we're still going from 0 to 2 pi. 0 to 2 pi. Okay. And then we have our original graph is from -1 to 1. Okay, so but we're going to have to do a few things, a couple of things. So whenever you have to multiply y values and some other things, do the multiply y values first, because if you shift, then you lose the y value, right? Because now it's been moved. And so we want to multiply the y values at the beginning. Okay, so if you ever have this, do this first. Okay. All right, so I will do, my final graph will be 2 plus 2 cosine x, and that one will be solid black. I'm going to have to do this, and I'm going to have to do this. So I'm going to need 2 colors. Okay, let's do a blue first. Okay, so we'll do y equals 2 cosine x, since we're going to have to do that one first. Okay. And then after that, then we're going to have to shift, right? Okay, so let's do the original one in purple. Okay. All right, so let's start with the original graph. We have cosine x. Okay, so the original graph, we have this, right? Halfway between 0, halfway between 0. All right, so this is the original graph. Okay, and then it says do this first. Whenever you have to multiply the y values, do that first. Okay, so let's multiply the y values by 2. And we're going to do that in blue, since we already used purple. Okay, all right, so multiply the y values by 2. That means I'm going to have to extend this. Let me write down some more numbers. 2, 3, -2, -3. I'll add more if I need to later. Okay, so all right, so this is the original graph, just basic cosine x. And now I'm going to multiply the y values by 2. Y value is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Y value is 0. 0 times 2 is 2. Y value is -1. -1 times 2 is -2. Y value is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. And here the y value is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Okay, so now here's the stretch that I see. Okay, so here it got stretched. And now I have to do the shift. So we did the stretch. Now we're going to have to do the shift. Shift up 2. All right, so I'm going to have to extend my graph even more. Okay, all the way up to here. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and just do it in black. All right, this is my last thing I need to do, and I'll get the final graph. So I'm going to take the blue graph and shift it up 2. So here, 1, 2. Shift this up 2, 1, 2. Shift up this point, 1, 2. Shift up this point, 1, 2. And shift this point up 2, 1, 2. And so now I have this graph. Okay, so this is what this graph looks like when you do each of these things. So I always start off with the original graph, and then I do all of the things that are being done to it. Okay, so that's how I like to do it. That way I keep track of everything. I know that I've taken care of all of the things that are being added and multiplied, etc. Okay, so we started off with the original graph, and then if you ever have to multiply the y values, do that first. So start off with the original graph, multiply the y values, and then shift. Okay. All right, let's take a look at another one. Okay, so let's go ahead and graph y equals 1 minus sine x. Okay. All right, so two things are happening here. Okay, so this here is going to shift. Since this is +1, it's going to go up 1. Okay, so we have that. Okay, and then this might be hard to notice it, but this is actually, you have to multiply the y values by -1. Okay, so again, whenever you have to multiply the y values, you want to do that first. Multiply y values by -1. Okay, again, always do these first. Do this first. Okay, and since nothing is happening to our angle, we will still graph it from 0 to 2 pi. Okay. When we start doing the horizontal shifts, that's going to change. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and do our graph. What are we going to be shifting by? Up 1? Okay. Just trying to anticipate how much space I'm going to need. So I'll do this. Okay. 2, 3. All right, so we're still going from 0 to 2 pi. Halfway between is pi. Okay, and this is sine. Yes, it's a sine. So here, again, I'll start off with the original one. Okay. So I like to start off with the original graph, original trig function. Okay. Which is 0, 0, 0, halfway between 1, and halfway between over here, -1. Okay. This is our original graph of sine. Okay. All right. And then we have to do these two things. And whenever you have to multiply y values, you want to do that first. So we're going to multiply by -1. So I'll do that one in blue. Okay, so I'll do this in blue, multiply the y values by -1. This is 0. Okay, the y value here is 0. The y value here is 1. The y value here is 0. The y value here is -1. And the y value here is 0. Okay, we're going to do each one of those. Multiply the y value by -1. Y value 0. 0 times -1 is 0. Y value here is 1. 1 times -1 is -1. Y value here is 0. 0 times -1 is 0. Y value here is -1. So -1 times -1 is +1. And here, the y value is 0. 0 times -1 is 0. And we already know that whenever we multiply by a negative, it's going to flip the wave, right? Okay. So here's that. Okay. Here's that transformation. Okay, so now we're going to shift my blue wave up 1. So that's going to be my final move. So I'll do it in black. All right, so we're going to shift these blue points up 1. So here we're going to go up 1. Here we're going to go up 1. Here we go up 1. Here we go up 1. And here we go up 1. So now I see that blue wave shifted up 1, and it looks like this. Okay. All right, very good. Let's try. So now let's try it with all 3. So we haven't been multiplying. We haven't been changing our endpoints. So let's throw that in the mix now. Again, it's nothing big. All you do is change these numbers here. That's all it does. So nothing else is happening to the graph. Okay. I mean, there is, but not when you graph it with the backdrop of the new endpoints. Okay, so let's take a look. All right, so let's do this one. So let's graph y equals -3 minus 2 times sine pi x. All right, so let's take a look and see what each of these things do to the graph. We know this one shifts the graph, and since it's -3, it'll shift it down 3. Okay, so we know that. This, it's being multiplied with the trig function, so we know we have to multiply the y values. And whenever we see this, we have to do this first, right? Do this first, because then we lose our original y values if we shift it, right? And then now this here, we're not going to go from 0 to 2 pi because now we're messing with the angle. So we're going to get new endpoints. So let's solve for the new endpoints. So normally we get 1 cycle from 0 to 2 pi, but because we're messing with the angle, we have to solve for x and find our new endpoint. So divide everything by pi, and we get 0 to 2. So that's going to be the new backdrop for our sine graph. Okay, so let's go ahead and label our axes from 0 to 2 instead of 0 to 2 pi. And remember, 2 pi is just a number. It's 6.28, right? So instead of getting a graph from 0 to 6.28, we actually get a sine graph from 0 to 2. I need to sneeze. Not anymore. Did you hate that? Okay. Okay, so 0 to 2. Okay. And the original graph goes from -1 to -1 to 1. Okay, but that's all going to change once we start doing all of these things. Okay, but let's get the original sine graph on here so that we can do each thing one step at a time. All right, so my original sine graph has 0, 0, 0, halfway between here 1, halfway between here -1. Okay, so this is my basic sine x. All right, so now let's start doing all these fancy things to it. All right, so we have to multiply the y values by -2. Okay, so let me add more stuff to the axes. All right, so let me draw this longer. Okay, it's kind of messy. All right, -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay. All right, so let's see. Multiply the y values by -2. I should write that in here by -2. Okay. So let's do that, and I'll do that in blue. Every time I do something to it, I'll use a different color. Okay. Multiply the y values by -2. Y value here is 0. 0 times -2 is 0. Y value here is 1. 1 times -2 is -2. So a point down there. Y value is 0. 0 times -2 is 0. Y value is -1. -1 times -2 is +2. And y value is 0. 0 times -2 is 0. And again, we know that when we multiply the trig function by a negative number, it flips the wave, right? All right, so, and let me do this. All right, so I did that. Now I have to shift this blue wave down 3 units. And that's going to be my last move, so I'll do it in black. Down 3 units, so starting with this first blue point, down 3 units. 1, 2, 3. This next blue point, down 3 units. 1, 2, 3. And this blue point, down 3 units. 1, 2, 3. And this blue point, 1, 2, 3. And this blue point, 1, 2, 3. So we see that blue wave gets shifted down 3 units. That blue wave, the whole wave, gets shifted down 3 units. Okay? So that's really all you do. So when you have, again, when you're messing with the angle, you're still going to have this basic shape. It's just you're changing from where you get this one wave from. You know, instead of going from 0 to 2 pi, it's from 0 to 2. Okay? All right. let's see. Why don't you try this one? Okay, so try this one. Oh, okay. How about if we do it here on the side? Because my screen won't scroll down anymore. So here, let's try this last one over here. Okay, so try this one and see if you get what I have. Okay, so try, let's do a cosine graph. Okay, try this one. Graph y equals 4 plus 3 cosine pi x for one cycle. For one cycle. Okay. All right. So go ahead and hit the pause button and then come back and see if you get the same thing. Okay. So here, let me use a different color. Let's go with, I'm going to use blue to dissect this. Okay. So this is going to be a shift. And since it's positive 4, it'll be up 4. This is going to multiply my y values. And whenever we have to multiply y values, we do that first. Okay. And since we're messing with the angle, we're going to get new endpoints. Okay, so let's figure out where we're going. So instead of graphing the cosine graph from 0 to 2 pi, right? So instead of going from 0 to 2 pi, let's solve for x here, divide everything by pi. And so this is where we get new endpoints. Okay, so instead of setting up our axes from 0 to 2 pi, we're going to set it up from 0 to 2. Okay. All right, so let's go back to our black ink. All right, so that's not 0, that's 2. All right, so we're going to go from 0 to 2 instead of 0 to 2 pi. And then here, I'm going to make this kind of small since we're going to have to shift up quite a bit. I'll make that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I might need even more. Okay, we'll adjust it. I'm going to have to. -2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let's go ahead and plot the original cosine. All right, original cosine is 0 on the end, 1 on the ends, -1 halfway between, halfway in the middle. And then 0 here, halfway, and 0 halfway. That's basic cosine, right? All right, so now we're going to do this first. Multiply the y values by 3. Great, I'm going to have to get like some big numbers up here. Okay, anyway. All right, so multiply the y values by 3. So here, let me do that one in blue. All right, 1 times 3 is 3. 0 times 3 is 0. -1 times 3 is -3. 0 times 3 is 3. 0. And 1 times 3 is 3. Okay, so we see that multiplying by 3 stretches the graph. Okay, and now we're going to have to shift up 4. I'm a little bit short there. Let me add another tick mark here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, so that should take care of it. I should be able to shift all of these blue points up 4. All right, so starting with this first blue point, up 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. This blue point, shift it up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This blue point, shift it up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this one, shift up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this one, shift it up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so we see the blue cosine wave. We see the blue cosine wave got shifted up 4. Okay, so this is what you should have gotten for your graph. Okay, so those are our vertical shifts. So the next part 2, is going to focus on the horizontal shifts. But the horizontal shifts are really just going to be changing the endpoints, okay? Because here, normally we have endpoints from 0 to 2 pi. And so what's going to happen is now it's going to get shifted. So our endpoints are no longer going to be 0 and 2 pi. So we're going to take a look at finding the new endpoints, which works just like this. Okay. All right.